African slaves in America. You dig what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And for that reason, I feel that, you know, so they've already, you know, now what I will give them credit for, is they have already, you know, made an attempt to make amends by way of apology for their shameful role. You know, that's their words and not mine. Their shameful role in the transatlantic slave trade. Now, the thing about that is, we appreciate the apology. However, you cannot rid yourself of the guilt. You cannot rid yourself of the shame. You cannot recover, make amends for the atrocity of the transatlantic slave trade just by doing what you feel is appropriate. You must come to us and hear us say. You must hear us say what will be appropriate to make amends for us to move forward. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that is why Lloyd's of London has been put on notice.
Are there, so this campaign just started, this was maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe 2.5 weeks ago. Are there any other companies that you plan to put on notice? Because I know there's a lot of research going into this, and they weren't the only one. So is there anybody else on the list?
It is, but I feel like, you know what I'm saying, first thing first. Right now we focused on Lloyd's of London. You know what I'm saying? I don't think we should, you know, approach too many calls to action at one time. So right now we focused on Lloyd's of London. But yes, there are several more. And they're worth billions and trillions too. The way I see it, right, is about between 40 to 50 million black people in America. Okay? Of that 40 to 50 million black people in America, let's just say maybe, 9% of them, 9 to 10, let's just say 10% of them are from Africa already or from other places, and they're not descendants of African slaves in America, okay? So that takes us to about 44, 45 million of us here, African Americans, descendants of slaves, okay? So that means it'll take about 44, 45 trillion to get every one of us in America $1 million. So now how do we go about that? They're not going to give it to us just because we deserve it, just because they want to do the right thing, just because we ask for it. So life is about leverage. All right. Well, Lloyd's of London is in a position. Lloyd's of London is in a position. They worth 56.8 billion. They've already said how morally at fault they were for their participation, for their shameful role. Okay, well, you need to rectify that with some of the empire that you have built off the blood, sweat, tears, and the backs of our ancestors. Period. So I feel that we are entitled to 10% of that company in perpetuity, simply because that company would not exist if it was not for us. Absolutely. And I say 10% is modest. I was going to say 14% because African Americans make up for 14% of the population in America, but I just rounded down to 10% because I can do the math better in my head that way. So I feel like 10% in perpetuity. All right. Now, what we can do with that 10%, which is 5.6 billion, we can take that to a brokerage firm. We can take that to a brokerage firm and draw down on it, man. 10x, which would put us at 56 billion. We can draw down on it 10x based off the future earnings off the equity that we have in this entity. And we continue to pat the pockets of all the companies that had participation in the transatlantic slave trade until we make it to 44, 45 trillion.
Now we could talk about what happened based on what Lloyd's of London did, and we talked a little bit about this when we did the interview. Was that you said that you realized that black people in the neighborhoods we come from had to do more just to be able to have a regular or have what some people call a regular life, have a normal life. And one of the things that you talked about was about them selling candy, and some of the part of them got edited out. But I want the people to know the story about the hustles that you first learned and how that took you to kind of where you are now.
I mean, okay. So I started. So as a hustle, man, when I was young, right? So I lived in the ghetto. My mom and my dad worked together. My dad lived in New York. You know what I mean? He stayed in a high rise, Upper West Side, Manhattan, 94th Street in Columbus, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had everything there was. He had cable TV with all the channels, even pay-per-view. You know, he had the scrambled boxes. He had 4, 5 different sodas and different types of. He had Cokes, Pepsis, orange sodas. He had fruits, vegetables, meats. I'm talking about
Yeah,
stock, soup to nuts.
yeah,
And when I go back to my mama house, $200, you know what I'm saying, and some school clothes to go back, you know what I mean, to the ghetto.
mm-hmm.
I used to be in school all the time where people either didn't get to go to the candy lady or ran out of candy in the middle of the day. So I said, all right, well, I tell you what, I'm gonna take my $100, $200, and go to Sam Warehouse, which was like Costco at the time, and I'm gonna purchase some candy and I'm gonna sell it in school. And so that's what I did. You dig what I'm saying? I purchased candy and sold it in
Mm-hmm.
school, earned me a profit, flipped it, kept flipping it. My goal at first was only to make $20 a day, give me $100 a week. Stretch that out, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? 3 months, 4 months, and then I'm back to my dad, and I give me another $200, $300. Well, it got so good to where I got to making $200, $250, and $300. And you know, I had an elaborate candy business that I used to have to. I used to give I gave my fifth grade teacher, Mr. Flynn at Grove Park. He used to ask me for a Snicker a day for him to turn his head and let me.
Man, paying the cost of doing business.
Absolutely, cost of doing business, man. You know what I'm saying? Best money I ever spent. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then in sixth grade, since sixth graders, seventh graders, and eighth graders had different hallways, I had different people with different lockers keeping candy for me and working on different hallways. What the hell? A little more motion on the boat than I'm used to.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so you know what I mean. So that was like the introduce. That was my introduction to being an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. So with that led you down a particular path that there was another part of the interview where you said that you always knew what you wanted to do, but you didn't know the avenues to get there, and that was something that taught you, kind of the hustle. So why do you think it's important now with your new class that you're launching at Clark Atlanta University? Why is it important for people to learn the business behind trap music, or like the trap business, so to speak?
Well, I think it's important because when people think of trap music, a lot of times people think negative. You know what I'm saying? People see
Mm,
negative from it, but what they don't understand is the music is a result of the reality. The music is a product of the reality of the environment. We've been subjected to an environment due to matters beyond our control.
mm,
You know what I mean? We've been, like I said, marginalized and discriminated upon, and for the Iran-Contra scandal, for the United States to admittedly, for the United States, what the hell does the United States need with loads of cocaine? Why would they trade guns for loads of
mm,
cocaine? I'll answer that question because they needed another way to fund other projects that they could not fund with tax dollars. So
mm,
it must have been something illegal to where you could not justify using the American people's tax dollars to do it. All right.
mm,
So they took this cocaine and they used it for whatever it is they say they needed it for. But in addition to that, they also flooded our communities with it to keep us marginalized, to keep us financially enabled, incapacitated. But the thing is, black people at the time couldn't afford cocaine. You know what I mean? They could afford a little weed.
Mm-hmm.
Cocaine was a rich man's drug. So what did they have to do?
Yeah,
They
that
had
wasn't
to
for
make
us.
it affordable. They had to make it affordable. How did they make it affordable? They got some scientists somewhere to mix some cocaine, some water, some baking soda, put it on fire, and then they had crack. Now listen, didn't no black man just stumble up, didn't no nigga in the ghetto just stumble up on how to make crack. Ain't nobody gonna risk boiling no cocaine, fuck up they whole pack just because they trying to try something. That didn't work. It didn't work that way.
Right.
They got the recipe to somebody and they infested the communities with it. And after they did that, they went and waged war on those same communities that they put crack inside of. Changed the laws to where crack was charged 100 to 1 as to cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
And that only perpetuated mass incarceration, free labor.
Absolutely.
Now,
So these
when things like that happen, that's easily entrapment. Everybody locked up for crack right now, man, should have a strong case for entrapment,
mm-hmm.
but they don't. All right, and the results of all of that is, our communities being in the dire state that they in today. Now, there can be no bad without good. So, what is the good to come out of that? We built industries off of it. Hip hop
Mm-hmm.
came from the conditions of our neighborhood. The first
Mm-hmm.
hip hop song is called "The Message," I believe, if I ain't mistaken, and
Yep.
it's really talking about why things are so more fucked up, so much more fucked up in our communities than it is
Yeah, than
across the
everywhere
street
else.
or down the
Mm-hmm.
road where white people stay, and we don't have the same opportunities available to us.
Mm-hmm.
Hip hop came from that. We had to create our own culture, create our own industries. Trap music is a result of that. They didn't count on us taking our experiences and packaging them as philosophical presentations, set the music, and that so many people would relate to it that it would become a $1 billion industry. That is a process, a business to that. You know what I'm saying? And that business is
Absolutely.
the business of trap music. And that's what I be teaching the club.
Mm-hmm. So we spoke a little bit before about when you were saying that this class is a version of what you taught when you were in prison, right? Um,
I
and we talked
mean, not
about,
quite. What I
you know,
said was, wait a
you
minute.
spoke
No,
briefly
not quite.
about how.
Well, not
Okay,
quite.
okay, go ahead, go ahead.
What I said was that I taught a class
Mm-hmm.
in prison. It was called thinking outside of the box. And thinking outside of the box was basically,
Uh,
me identifying the strengths and talents that the people who were already locked up with me
okay,
had. You know what I'm saying?
okay,
If you ran a corner as a drug dealer, you could run a fucking corporation, bro.
yeah,
You dig what I'm saying? If
yeah,
you had
absolutely.
Absolutely. If you was the plug, if you been the weight man, you had to go out and identify a better plug, get you better numbers. You had to identify who you was going to distribute their work to and raise at an increased margin. And you know what
Yeah,
I'm
the
saying? Put the
corporation's a lot
profits to the
easier.
side, and have to take the re-up and go back and get money and take that from 1 brick to 3 bricks to 17 to
Mm-hmm.
16. You know what I mean? To do that, if you could do that, you can run a motherfucking corporation. All you have to do is take them same skills, them same talents and abilities, and apply them to legitimate means. You
Mm-hmm.
dig what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that's what my
So
class thinking outside the box was. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the same as the business of trap music.
So do you think that, or have you ever at any point, because you spoke about all of the benefits of it and kind of like the positive outlook
Can
that
we keep it
came
like this
from the
while I
crack
do
and
the
everything,
interview?
or
Oh,
just the different things
yeah,
that
keep it
you
like
can
this so
see that
I can see it.
that kind of you took and made better, or that were that you were able to transform into something that was more positive. But are there any things from that time or from beyond that time that you kind of like regret?
What do you mean?
Like like anything that you did during those times that even though it became a positive that you would do over or you would do it differently if you could go back.
I mean, I think I recognize that I was contributing to the deterioration of our community. Um,
Mm,
but however, if it were not for that, I probably would not have had the experiences or the resources that would have allowed me to make it to where I am, to where I can rebuild the community. So, like I
absolutely.
said, man, you know what I'm saying? There could be no light. There could be no light without darkness. You did.
Mm,
So I
yeah.
mean,
Well,
I hate that it happened,
one of the
but
parts that
it may have been a necessary. It may have been a necessary evil to arrive to where we are today.
mm, yeah, one
Can
of
you
the
hear me?
parts of the interview that that really resonated with people and keeps popping up is when you said you got to check all the boxes. You know, there's things you got to try out to see what works and see what you like and don't like, and people just keep popping up with that part. And that's kind of like what you're saying is like there's a there's a there's a light that comes out of the darkness, but there's also some things that we may do sometimes or go through different you know these are different scenarios where you may have went down a
Hey,
different
tell them
path
stop, bro. I got
had
some
you made
good
a
service.
turn.
I'm running out of service, so tell them stop. You say what now, bro? I'm gonna start the boat so I won't keep going in and out of service.
All good, I appreciate that. What I was just saying is that when you make certain turns, each action has a reaction, right? So when you make certain moves, they lead you or could lead you down a different path. And you said that during the interview, you said there was no other avenue that you could see yourself going down but the route of entertainment or but the route that you went. When you look at it now, do you see that any differently, or are you still content with exactly how you ended up now?
Hey, well, listen, this is what I hate to do, man. I hate to, like, this is fantasy
Mm,
land to me. You dig what I'm saying? Here we are. Yeah, I wish I was born with a trust fund, and my mom and my daddy was a married couple, and we lived in Buckhead instead of Bankhead, and you know what I'm saying? And I
yeah.
had to me, but that just wasn't the case. So the cards I was dealt, I played them to the best of
Yeah.
my ability, and
Mm,
have on not doing certain things, I would fantasize on not having to do certain things.
yeah. With that, you mentioned, in that last question, you mentioned of your mom and dad. So you are a husband and you are a father. And I remember when you were in Philly, and you were doing the Health Fest, and Tiny popped up, and she was like surprised you at the event or whatever. And I know that from just watching that y'all kind of like support each other. How important is having that support system of having a strong family behind you when you making your future decisions?
I mean, man, to be honest with you, bro, I think that my support system is everything. I think that, man, if you don't have enough support, you can only go so far.
Mm,
You can only go so far, bro. I mean, without my wife, my kids, my mama, my uncles, my aunts, my homeboy, my sisters, my brothers, like, you know what I mean? My nieces and nephews
yeah.
and cousins, and you know what I mean? Without their support, because for real, they kind of they ground you and give you a platform, like a substantial base where you could take off from. You know what I mean? But if some
Mm,
people ain't got the ground beneath their feet, so they can only go so far. You dig what I'm saying? I don't give a damn
yeah.
what you trying to build, how high you want it to go. If it ain't a solid foundation, shit, man, your ass you gonna catch hell. So they've been my foundation, and that
Yeah.
off of the support that they've surrounded me with since I was born, to be honest with you.
Hmm. One of the things besides the structure of like your family life and your career and your rapping, acting, and all these other things. One of the things that people always talk about when they mention Ti is your vocabulary. Is one of the things that stands out about you because of what people's perceptions of what and who hip hop artists are. At what point in your life did you ever put an emphasis on your vocabulary, on reading, on self education?
Man, that's a great question. I mean, to be honest with you, bro, ever since I was a kid, like I've been old, hand me the paper, say, here, read this. And I've always been sharp. You know what I'm saying? I always been very good with math. I was like, I was a straight A 4.0 student up until I probably, got the seventh grade and became more concerned with finances and entrepreneurship and less concerned with A's and B's and grades and teachers and homework.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've always read, you know what I mean? I've always challenged authority. I've always found ways to speak truth to power. I've never been so engaged in school and never so in like just consumed with an assignment than I was when I was trying to prove a teacher wrong. You know what I mean? Like, cause
Mm-hmm.
that whole Christopher Columbus shit and the whole and I got suspended in sixth grade.
Yeah,
I got suspended in sixth grade for not standing up for the pledge. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I just
way
always
before
have
cat.
been that way. I always have. I've been a rebel. You know what I'm saying? A revolutionary. I just always have. Tupac has always been my favorite artist. You dig what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Since he came out at least. And I've always just, tried to fill myself with the knowledge and the wherewithal to do two things: to learn for myself, to expect better of myself, and to be able to lead, guide, and direct others. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's just always been a priority of mine ever since I can remember. Like
Mm.
you know what I mean? Some people do chips and bottles and stuff like that. I sit around, I ain't bullshit. I sit around and think about how to kind of solve issues that plague our communities, issues that would make my life, my family life easier, issues that could increase the bag, issues that
Mm-hmm.
are, you know what I mean? Like, that's how I came up with the Lloyds of London shit.
Yeah.
Just thinking, challenging myself, blowing
So
blowing
you
smoke.
started that.
I mean, I won't say I started anything, but
Okay.
the
Okay. Okay.
particular the particular call to action and the strategy
Mm.
that I just kind of articulated to you, yes, that's something
Mm.
that I came up with. But
Okay.
it's not mine's and mine's alone.
Okay.
I came up with it, it came to me, but I feel like that's, the universe using me as a vessel to, what I'm saying,
Absolutely.
push it through to
Absolutely.
benefit the rest of us. And
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to other people who I feel like are smarter than me, more experienced than me, for the purpose of guidance. If it's something that I ain't thought about and you done thought about it, put it in there because it ain't just for me. It's to benefit the people. It's to liberate the community, the generation. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Hold one
So
second.
one of
Hey, pass me some water.
so one
I'm
of the
sorry.
things that you just said was that you want to, you're working to liberate the people and to push the culture forward, right? And I remember on your podcast on Expeditiously, you had Jane Elliott on there once, and you asked Jane Elliott the question of what did she think, what did she think began white supremacy, and what could we do to end it? Now you talked about what you think began it, but what do you think we can do to work towards the end of it?
What do I think we can do to work toward the end of it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what's gonna end it, man. Little brown grandbabies. Little brown grandbabies is gonna end white supremacy. That's why,
Okay.
they are so tenaciously kind of like, moving in the direction of, you know, uh, uh, all of the desperation plays. You know what I'm saying? You know, that's why, you know, they trying to catch us by ourselves and hang us because they grip is loosening. The moment is past. The time is up. You dig what I'm saying? Simply because it's so much hate and it's just not fun to be around. It's just not fun to be around. The people who
Mm-hmm.
around them don't even like to be around them, man. The energy is off. The shit is whack. You know what I mean? So they'd rather come be around us and
Mm-hmm.
other people who are enlightened, whose light shine brighter, who
Absolutely.
positive, who produce positivity. And that's just kind of like what everybody, that's what attracts people. And so for that reason, like, you know, it just, we more fun. Like, it's just cooler to be around us. So they women love us. And you know what I'm saying? And we make little brown babies. And a, if you were a white supremacist in your 20s, in the 60s, now here you is 60, 70, 80 years old. Yeah, you don't feel like that about your grandbaby. I know we was doing that when we were young, man, but this is my goddamn grandbaby. I don't give a fuck what you say. You say something about my grandbaby, I'll put a hole in you, Billy. You dig what I'm saying? So I feel like that's what's going to
Mm-hmm.
end white supremacy. And eventually, man, 30, 40, 50 years from now, it's going to be more and more brown people, less and less white people. Not to say that white people is bad or is wrong, but for real,
Yeah, 2050
if
is coming.
if the only thing you have in your advantage is the color of your skin, you ain't shit. If you have to, if in order for you to be tall, you must keep everyone else on their knees, you ain't shit. And white supremacy is just holding on to that advantage, to that entitlement, to that, you know, the thing that gives them that head start without them even having to focus on their talents or on their intellect. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they don't even have to work as hard as everybody else because they're already white. They already have a system. It's already in the bag for them. They're holding on to that, but that shit got to go. That shit got to go. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And
Yeah,
that's and little brown babies is gonna kill white.
absolutely.